Well, Happy New Year, everyone. It's nice to see you all. A big thank you from my heart to yours for all those of you making generous donations and just supporting the satsang over the last year and the last years. From my heart to yours, truly thank you. Thank you for the support and the dana. It's been greatly, greatly helpful. A couple of quick announcements here. Um, I do have a retreat, online retreat in the works. A lot of people have asked me to put another one on the book, so we're looking. It's looking like the first weekend in March. That's tentative. So refer to the website for the final details of that. Stay tuned for that. Um, Also, I have a kundalini group, so a support group for individuals who are struggling with the overwhelming energies of spiritual awakening. Specifically, if you have just too much energy in your body, flowing through your mind, flowing through your emotional nature. If you're having difficulty with kundalini and just feeling overwhelmed by it, I have a group starting on Fridays, and I believe it's starting January 22nd, so in about 3 weeks here. And look on the website for details about that. And let's see if I think I had one more. Um, yeah, I'm going to just keep offering this disclaimer. Um, there's going to be times when I say the wrong thing, when I'm dyslexic, I get my words mixed up. Please forgive me. If there's something you don't understand, feel free to question it. But that doesn't mean you have to go on the attack with me or cancel me or anything like that. But just sit with the teaching, see if it rings true for you. And maybe it doesn't make sense now. Maybe it's completely faulty or false, whatever it is that Mr. Holiday is saying. Maybe you just need to put it on the back burner and the teaching's not for you in this moment. So just keep that in mind. 2020 was a year where a lot of people were getting canceled. And it was also a year where we forgot about forgiveness and working with forgiveness, and that we're human, that we're all works in progress. And so just keep that in mind. I'm a work in progress as well. That's my quick disclaimer. If you have feedback for me, be constructive, not destructive. I'll say that in general to anyone. If you have feedback for anyone, be constructive, not destructive. Okay, let's see here. I think those are my announcements. So let's start this evening by getting in contact with your heart. With your heart. Just feeling into the innate goodness of your heart. And I'm going to invite you just to play a little bit with this question. It's an inquiry question. Who am I? Who am I? When you feel into your essential nature, who is it that you are? So in this moment, I encourage you to let go of your egoic nature, your egoic identification, your tribal consciousness, your political party, your age, your gender. Whether you're woke or not woke, just put all that aside. And then we ask, who am I? Who am I truly? At the core of my being, who am I? And can you get in touch with that which is good, that which is holy, that which is divine, that which is timeless and eternal? Who am I? And because we're so close to the new year here, and we're on day 3 now, I encourage you to look back at 2020 and just acknowledge all the times when you weren't living from your highest self. And in a loving way, can you smile? So we're not here to judge ourselves, but can you smile and can you forgive that individual for being less than, for putting your foot in your mouth, for falling on your face in the mud? Can you forgive yourself for being human? Can you look at some of the difficulties you got in and just smile, just knowing, oh, when I connect to my higher consciousness, and I realize I want to live differently than what my ego tells me to do. And so who am I truly? And can I forgive myself for, for my humanity and the human conditions of planet Earth? And then going forward, who am I? And how do I want to live in 2021? How do I want to share of my heart? Do I want to love more? Do I want more peace? Do I want to be a conduit of grace and light and love? Are there some things I need to work on? Just in a human way. Do I need to clean up my act a little bit so that my inner world, my inner truth, is reflected in my outward reality? And so this is a great spiritual pair of questions. Who am I? And how shall I live? When you know who you are, the how shall I live just completes itself. When you know you're the Buddha, you begin to act more like the Buddha. But when you falsely or mistakenly think of yourself as your egoic nature, then you're kind of a slave to those motives and desires and that whole realm of thinking. You just go unconscious. But when you know who you are, the question of how shall I live becomes quite clear. Very few things we actually struggle with when you know who you are. When you don't know who you are, then you can have competing voices in your consciousness. And if there are competing voices, doesn't mean you're bad or wrong. It just means you need more love, more love. The voices need to be loved into submission. You know, the different ways the ego kind of splits off and fights with itself. We need to love those to death. When you love them to death, they come into unity. But when we ignore them or fight with them or repress them, then shadows form and division takes root. And so in order to be free, in order to be enlightened, we want to have one voice in our head. Not 2, not 10. We want to have one voice. One of the quickest ways to step into this experience of one voice is through just feeling into your heart and noticing what is good, what is true, what is pure about my nature, and surrendering to this. So anyways, I thought I'd just jump into the questions. I have a wonderful question from Lisa here that's kind of goes along with this. She writes, Craig, is the outer reality a reflection of the inner beliefs in evolution? If some variables of the outer world do not change or get worse, is it because there are blocks in the inner dimensions? Sometimes I don't know how to surrender even more to some reoccurring painful events that keep appearing. Okay. So this is a great question, and there's multiple truths present in it. So it is absolutely true that life is a mirror. And so if anything bad happens in your life, it's all completely 100% your fault, your creation. No, I'm just kidding with you. I couldn't help myself. Look, we live in an evolutionary world. And in an evolutionary world, there's people who are really like super duper divine. They're just radiating light. These incredible loving beings. There's also people who, are covered or afflicted with narcissism or borderline personality disorder. They have, they have deeply divisive consciousness. And if you're in relationship with them, it's not necessarily your fault. It's not necessarily a reflection of your inner world or because you have blocks within you. And so the reason I said it is all your fault was I wanted to point out the absurdity of some spiritual teachings. And that's the problem with life here on planet Earth, is it's a great paradox. So while it is, I'll say mostly true, that, your inner world is reflected, on the outside, the more peaceful you are on the inside, the more peace you tend to see and experience in life. So that's true, but it's not like absolutely true 100% in every circumstance. Some spiritual people, especially in the New Age movement, they use this teaching life as a mirror as a way to kind of shame people for being in difficult circumstances, saying it's all your fault, it's all your creation. You create your reality. And it's true, we create some of our reality. And I'll give an example of this. I have a sweet little dog named Doodles, and I was laying on the ground a couple of minutes ago, and I was just scratching his back, and he was rubbing up against me, and then he rolled over on his back, and he was really loving me up, and I was loving him up, and we love each other. And so my heart loves his heart loves my heart, and so we've created a reality together. My inner heart is reflected in his heart. And so we got up, me and Doodles, and we went for a little walk, and we went outside, and I saw this car kind of creeping down the little road I live on. And you can always kind of tell when someone's being a little creepy, and it's nighttime, and I picked up Doodles and kind of got out of the way. I would just walk off into the grass, but we got a lot of snow now, so I picked up Doodles, got out of the way, and when I went by, they had their window cracked a little bit, and I smelled I want to say the sweet perfume of drugs. That they were up to something, and I just felt into the car, and there was a very dark vibration, and so the individuals in that car, they created their own reality, a reality of pain, of suffering, of drug addiction and abuse, in one form or another. It just felt, I'll just say, sketchy, is just the word I'll use for it. And so me and Doodles, we kind of created our own little love bubble. And these two guys created their own world, driving around doing drugs out on some snowy roads. And so, yes, we have to take ownership for the lives that we have to some degree. To some degree. In the example of drug abuse, oftentimes the individual's in pain, so they've shut down their heart, they've shut down their solar plexus in their belly, so they're disconnected from love and they're disconnected from power. And because they feel dead inside, they need some excitement through drugs, and then it becomes a whole thing. And so, yes, our inner reality, our inner blockages can be reflected in an outer way in this example. But Lisa, one of the things that I know about you is you have a precious, compassionate, sensitive heart. And there's this dance that happens here on planet Earth, that when you have a sensitive, tender, compassionate heart, we tend to be like bunny rabbits. And in this world, there's also wolves. And wolves love to eat little bunnies. But it's not the bunny's fault that the wolf is coming after them. It's not your fault, that the coyotes want to eat you up. It's not your fault that they circle around you. I was hanging out with a good friend the other day, and he's a good guy, but he has a little bit of what I'll call a little bit of that wolf in him. We were doing some Muay Thai together, some kickboxing, and he was showing me all these places, like where to hit someone. And it was very confusing to my consciousness because, I love the energy of being a warrior, but I really don't want to hurt anyone. And he had this wolf consciousness that said, Craig, you want to look for their Achilles heel, the Achilles tendon area. He said, this is where a wolf comes. It says they come in from behind and, preys on the animal here. You get them in the back of the leg, because then they fall and they're at your mercy. And I just looked at that. I felt into that consciousness, and I saw, oh yeah, there's that consciousness here on planet Earth. There's that type of consciousness where people prey on each other. I mean, this is a world where animals eat other animals. It's kind of wild when you think about it. And so, Lisa, what I want to warn you about is this idea that you need to surrender more to reoccurring painful events. I don't want you to take this on that it's your fault that people pick on you. It's not because you have an inner blockage or there's something wrong with you. It may mean that you have to shift the way you are surrendering. And so there's the surrendering that we do, say as a bunny rabbit, where we just kind of lay down and just let ourselves get eaten because, we know there's no hope. But there's a different kind of surrender where we stand up and we fight back, where we set boundaries, where we leave a situation. And so surrender is not always a passive thing. What I learned as I matured on the path was that true surrender is actually quite active. Quite active. Me stepping into my power, me stepping into my truth. me stepping into my authority, me stepping into a place of love and forgiveness. But sometimes before we forgive, we have to step into our power and set boundaries. Because if you forgive someone without stepping into your power, then those people, they tend to do the same repetitive behavior again and again, violent behavior again and again, tends to be reoccurring. And so it may not be that you're blocked, but rather that you need to embody a sense of strength or a sense of power. It may be that you're strong and you're powerful and you're loving and you're sensitive and you're compassionate, you're doing everything right. But, sometimes we just have to leave. We just have to leave. And that's difficult with families. Sometimes we have to learn skills like how to work with narcissists who are in our family system. Sometimes we have to learn how to ignore them or step away from them or not engage with them and take our power back. Take our power back. And so this is a good question because it's true and it's not true that life is a mirror. And like another example today, I was just out walking and went on a hike and was doing some bouldering. And I looked up at this just giant rock wall. And my heart was open. I was completely relaxed. It's in nature by myself, so I'm really happy. And I just saw the absolute beauty of this massive, display of rock. I fell in love with it. And when you're open and when you love yourself fully, on the outward world, you see love. You see love in the form of a rock. You see love in the form of a puppy dog. You see love in the form of snow. You see love in the sky and in the freedom of an eagle. And you see it, you feel it, you experience it. But if I got, down from my hike and got to the trailhead and someone, I'll have some fun here. Someone was hanging out in the parking lot and they were talking on their cell phone, arguing with their girlfriend and backed up and ran into my car. It's not because there's something wrong with me and there's some inner blockage. Sometimes things just happen in life. Sometimes things just happen. Just happen. They just happen. Now, if there was an aspect of myself where I don't love myself fully, I don't honor myself, I don't respect myself fully, and I have some, psychological pain from the past, and say I had, let's have some fun here, say I had an abusive father, oftentimes, like the child Craig would grow up and try to find someone who was similar to my abusive father. And the reason is because I'm trying to heal that thing that was unhealed with dad. And so in this instant, this example that I'm giving, where I did have an inner blockage and then I grow up and I repeat it and I keep going after people who are like my father, shut down, emotionally cold, whatever, then my inner reality can be repeated. And so I'm telling you here, both and then the possibility of neither. Both and neither. Lisa, when I feel into this question the way you asked it, my gut sense is that you need to reconnect with your power. power as a form of surrender. And that's a paradox. Because most of us think of surrender as just letting go and letting go and letting life do what it wants to do. But sometimes surrender means we need to step more fully into our Buddha nature. So I hope that makes sense and wasn't too confusing. Life is a mirror and it's not. It is a mirror and it's not. And we live in an evolutionary world. It's not your fault if bad things happen to you. But we can learn from any experience and grow from it. So thank you, Lisa, for this question. This is a question that I sat with for, 15 years, this question, because I saw the truth in it every different way and the falsehood in it as well. So beautiful. All right, let's see here. David O'Brien has a question. Let's see if I can
I
press the
think I'm
button.
unmuted.
Oh, there you are.
Yeah.
Hi, David. Good to see you.
Hey, yeah, thanks, Greg. So I have a question. I almost think I'm a little dumb for asking it, but it's almost like a little bit of a mechanical question
That's
in
okay.
regards to coming to the heart, which is funny because I've had experiences of coming into the heart, maybe spontaneously
Yeah.
in the hall at Walmart or whatever it may be. Um, and I got your book here, and so I just want to read, this step that you say, you know, getting to know the true heart. You say in step 4, you say, notice how the emotional heart, or notice how the emotional nature or emotional heart feels. Notice the emotional feelings in the heart and belly, such as anger, resentment, sadness, fear, or subtle tension. Simply breathe and witness the feelings while gently inviting everything to relax and be held in a state of love. Do this as long as it takes. And then you say, this is an important step. If you try to skip over this process, you will never discover your true heart. Please breathe, feel, open, and experience until your body lets go of whatever you are holding. And so I'm like, okay, well, that's an important step. But it also seems like sometimes you say to just kind of go directly, just to directly feel into the heart,
Yeah.
but you don't necessarily mention that precursor step.
Yeah.
And so I feel
Yeah.
almost a little dumbass, like, I don't know.
No, no, no. This is not a dumb question at all, David. It's again, this is something that took me years to figure out. Basically, there's two hearts. I mean, there's actually three hearts. So there's the physical heart, which beats and pumps blood. I normally don't count that one, but so there's that. And then there's this emotional heart. Emotional heart is the thing that falls in love. It's the thing that gets hurt, that experiences rejection. Um, the emotional heart tends to be a dumping ground for all of our pain from our past. So if people have been mean, violent, abusive, if we've been hurt, whatever, it all just kind of gets stored in our emotional heart. Our emotional heart, it lives like right on the surface here. It's almost like the surface of the chest. Now, the true heart is deeper. It's inward toward the spine. So if you imagine, when I tell people feel into your heart, normally the first thing they feel is their emotional heart. Their emotional heart. And so that's why I made those steps in the book is I wanted people to be able to begin to discern what's the emotional heart and what's the true heart. The problem with our emotional heart is it's loud. It's really loud and it veils our true heart. So like in the yogic tradition, they talk about all these veils, that veil our consciousness. And so the two major veils are our thinking mind. We think I am my thoughts. And so this veils vast spacious awareness, like when you identify with your thoughts. And then when you identify with your emotional feelings, this veils the love and the unity consciousness of your true heart, of your true nature. So the reason I made that distinction in the book is almost always, like when I tell people, get in touch with your heart, often the first thing they feel is pain. They feel pain, like, because again, this tends to be, I hate to say it, but I'm just going to say it. People tend to use their emotional heart as a garbage can where they just stuff all their pain. And it's a funny dance. I'll display it a little bit. Like you go out, you get hurt, and uh, you feel really sad. You begin to cry because you're hurting, but then you do something like this. You go, you swallow, and you just repress that pain back down because we have this cultural conditioning that has taught us not to grieve, not to let go. So we repress, we squeeze in the throat chakra, we swallow the pain back down, and then the pain just gets stuck here in our emotional heart. And because there's so much pain here and it builds up over time, and there's cellular memory with it and everything, um, when I tell people get in touch with their heart, most people aren't like, oh, my heart is so beautiful. Most people are like, oh, it feels like pain. There's something wrong with me. I should just go back up into my head and live in my head. So the reason I made those steps in the book is I wanted people to be able to walk through those layers of the emotional pain. And one of the ways we walk through them is through breathing and feeling and opening to them. When you breathe and feel and open to old pain and trauma and heartache, despair, it naturally begins to release. And as it releases, the veil is lifted. And through this process, you get in contact with your true heart. And you're also learning, how to love yourself in an active way, which is an expression of the true heart. Does that make sense, David?
Yeah, totally. So if I'm not, maybe particularly feeling tons of nervousness or grief or sadness or anything on the surface, maybe I could just, it's like, all right, well, I'm already pretty relaxed in the chest. I don't know why, like, I get
Yeah.
psychologically irked by things sometimes. So I was
Yeah.
like, well, what does this Craig guy mean by this? Like,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
yeah,
And
you
so
know,
listen, if you're feeling just like really good, you can just go right into your heart, no problem. Uh, but most people, uh, when they're truly honest about how they feel, in their chest, in their heart, one of the first things they tend to encounter is like, oh my God, there's a lot of pain here, like a lot of pain. And, sometimes it's not even yours. Sometimes empathetically, it's just you're feeling the energy of the room. Like this car I was describing outside my house when I walked by, I felt a lot of pain inside that car. It was a dark world. There's a lot of pain happening there. And so I breathed into it, and then I just naturally released it to the big
well,
sky above. And so these are good skills to have along the path. And if you're feeling just absolutely exquisite, you'll just go, you'll open into your heart, and there'll be no veil there. There'll be no heaviness there. There'll just be a sense of freedom and love and unity there. And sometimes the other thing I can say, sometimes veils temporarily lift, and you're just having a good day, and it's just really easy to get in touch with your heart. And then the next day you wake up and you're like, oh my God, I feel like I have 800 pounds, on my chest right now. I don't even know what this is about. And that's the
okay.
time to do that practice.
And so I notice sometimes though you say, like, even when people, like, I've listened to a couple maybe songs that you've given, and you just instruct people to go straight into the heart, sort of, without
Yeah.
maybe, a focus on first relaxing. you know,
Yeah.
maybe what's on the surface. And so
Yeah.
maybe that's also, maybe it could go both ways. Like, again, it's like a weird mechanical, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
thing that I was thinking about today, you know.
Yeah. I mean, the big thing is just to do what works. Do what works, Dave. Like if you can go right in, go right in. That teaching there in the book is for individuals who have heaviness, or if you're just having a day where you feel a little heavy. And I wanted people to be able to discern the difference. I don't want to teach, the 4 steps to getting in touch with the heart. It'd be wonderful if there was just one step. Just bring awareness into your heart. And if it was that simple. For most people, it's not that simple. And so I broke it down and offered a couple more steps. But, we're humans. We're all different. We're at different places on the path. And that teaching may not make sense to you in this moment, but, tomorrow afternoon, you might be like, oh, there's some heaviness there. I need to
Well,
breathe, feel open, and let go. And then, boom, I'm in touch with my heart. Sometimes it's possible that you can be in great pain and you can just dive deep through the avenue of surrender and go directly into the heart. But for most of us, when there's heavy emotions, it's like driving a truck in mud. You just get stuck, and you're like, you're going real fast and then you're stuck.
well,
And so then we have to
I have
breathe,
felt that
feel,
too.
open, and let go. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah, that makes a little more sense. Yeah, I have felt that too, where I've kind of, you know, maybe I've been at the dinner table with people and I've been trying to, you know, really dive deep and like, oh, I gotta get in touch with my heart. But there's this like
Yeah.
plague on the outside, and it's just
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
eh. Like
Yeah. And
I
so
can't
then,
just, you know,
so then the question is, can I be with that? Can I be with the plague that's here in this moment? And again, just even saying that is a radical act of love and compassion. I mean, that's the energy of a bodhisattva saying, okay, there's a plague here. I'm going to breathe into the plague. I'm going to breathe into the difficulty. I'm going to allow everything to be just as it is and get in touch with this thing that is here. The other reason why this is a good exercise is because, a lot of spiritual people on the path develop what I call, well, I just call it, say, like a supreme bias for that which feels good and a supreme bias against that which feels bad. And if we want to be awake uh, in a way that's actually powerful and embodied, we have to be comfortable with both. We have to be comfortable with, absolute bliss states and absolute hell states. To be free is to be, in a real sense, unmoved by the comings and goings of life, by the swings of emotion, by the swings of pain, by the swings of difficulty. And so it's important, not to be, just, well, I just have this word. It's important not to be a bliss bunny on the path where we're just chasing after, real high peak state experiences and then absolutely avoiding anything that feels difficult and painful. So it's important. It's a big part of this teaching is a willingness to feel and experience things that are difficult. If we're unwilling to feel and experience difficulty, we'll never truly be free. You can have exalted states of consciousness, but if you're afraid of pain, um, you're no Buddha. You're just an ego that likes to feel really good, and you're getting high on emptiness or bliss or whatever, and that's a whole delusion in and of itself. So, anyways, David, there was nothing in there that was a stupid question. That was a brilliant question. So thanks for coming forward and sharing yourself.
I appreciate it, Craig. And I just want to say thanks. You've helped me like 10,000 fold, like so much.
Oh,
I just
good.
want to give big, big, big thanks. Big,
Yeah,
big, big, big thanks.
of course. Of course. Yeah, it's good to see you, Dave.
Thanks, Greg.
Yeah, yeah. All right, let's see. What else we have here? Is there something going on in the chat here? Let's see here. Okay, how about Kyle? Are you here, Kyle? Let's see if I have to unmute you or. Did that work?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, hi, Kyle.
Hi, guys. Hello, everybody.
Good, thanks. Yeah.
Good, good. So my question, Craig, is about sitting with people who are experiencing pain and suffering. I know I've heard you say that one of your unique abilities is to sit with those in pain. I've been kind of experiencing that as well, as I'm, tuning more and more into peace and letting that kind of seep in. It seems like others kind of just naturally just want to like converse with me and talk about maybe their day or their troubles. And I
Yeah.
kind of sit there and I kind of observe their energy. And so I'm wondering, what does it really mean to sit with others in pain, and how to do it well, how to do it well.
Yeah. Well, it all depends on, what capacity we're speaking about here. You know, so yeah, I guess one of the ways of looking at it is, what is our role in relationship to this individual? So for example, if I'm hanging out with some of my like rock climbing buddies, and we're just sitting around the campfire, and they, are going through hard times in life, I'm probably just going to sit and listen and not really say much, but, just validate, like, wow, that sounds really difficult or painful, or geez, I'm really sorry that happened. And so, that's just like, say, showing up on a level of friendship. If I go into the role of spiritual teacher with my friends, they might be like, hey, man, I didn't ask you to be Mr. Spiritual Teacher. I just wanted you to hear me. I just wanted to be heard. I just wanted you to, just treat me like I'm one of the guys. Whereas, like in this situation where I'm seated right now, I'm showing up more as a teacher and as a counselor, as a therapist. And so, it's important to really understand, well, what is my role here? What's my role? And is the person asking for help? And if they're asking for help, what kind of help are they asking for? Some people, all they want is just to be heard, nothing else. Some people want us to listen and to hold their hand and, embrace them and, wipe their tears, or, pick them up, or, like if they're a child, like, like my little girl, I'm not going to just listen to her. I'm going to pick her up. I'm going to pull her close to my chest. I'm going to rub her back. I'm going to give her the full, the full treatment, because she's my daughter. And this is something you intuitively feel into. For many of us, when we're first coming into our truth, when we're, spiritually awakening, and the mind becomes silent, you might find that people might just sit down next to you on a park bench, and they intuitively feel that you're open. So they might just share something with you. And maybe that's all they want, is just to share on the level of being human and just be heard. When people start asking you questions, well, then they're actually asking for support. They're asking for guidance. And so that's the thing that you really look for is, are people asking questions? Like, are they wanting more from you? Or are they just enjoying your quiet, luminous presence? Then you have to, you have to feel into that. And it's funny, like back when I was a high school teacher, I would teach and share things, like as a high school teacher. But what I found is a lot of kids, they didn't really care what I was teaching. What they wanted was to come sit at my desk and talk to me and just talk. And, I'd give them little bits of advice, but more often than not, I would just sit and listen. Just sit and listen and hold the space of love for them. And what people miss is that it's our presence, it's the openness, the spaciousness. That's what heals, more so than anything we say. But more often than not, it's just our presence. So sometimes people want to talk, but the words, when they come from your presence, that's what's healing. That's what's healing. And so, a big thing, Kyle, for you to look at as you come forward is, well, what exactly is my role? Like, what is my role? What am I doing? Like, what am I doing here in this moment? Am I just the silent Buddha in the room who's willing to shine love in every direction? Or are people wanting, something more? Are they wanting the presence plus, some support? They want to be steered in the right direction. So what's actually my role? One of the most silly things I experience once a year is when it didn't happen this year, but in years past, is when I go to the Science and Non-Duality conference. You have a bunch of spiritual teachers sitting at a table. None of them are listening to each other. All of them are in the role of just wanting to share and speak and be, I just call it the boss man. They just want to be the domineering Guruji at the table. And it's hilarious because to me, it just reminds me of, like something in high school where everyone's getting together and no one wants to listen. Everyone wants to talk and be the boss of each other, jockeying, for control, figuring out the pecking order. And of course, when you see that, it makes you want to just like puke on your shoes, versus just sitting back and listening and seeing each other as equals. So the big thing is, if we're offering space, the first thing we want to do is we see God in ourselves and we see God in the other, first and foremost. If we think that I know something and this individual's broken, the person I'm looking at, that's a terrible way of sitting with someone. I'm the all-knowing, they're the broken one. I'm awake, they're not. It's very dualistic, very divided. The way my teacher taught me was, Craig, when you sit down with someone, the first thing you see is that they are God. That they are God. They are absolutely divine. And so with this, you're sitting and you're listening, but you are seeing that which is divine, that which is holy about the individual. And boy, is that healing. When someone looks at you and they recognize your divinity, it's like, oh, wow. Wow, they see me. They understand me. They get me. They know me, my most essential nature. And this is a gift, you can give to people anywhere. You don't have to say it out loud. You just look at them and you see that they're good. And if you remember that kid you were speaking about during the retreat, the kid in your classroom, it's like looking at him and seeing not that he's in trouble, not that he's broken, not that he's struggling, but just looking at that boy and saying, this is God. Here is God, right here before me. Just seeing his essence, seeing his purity of being, seeing his divinity. So, so healing. So anyways, I hope that was helpful. I think you asked me something about sitting with people in pain. It's developing a tolerance for pain, is very helpful if you're going to do this type of work. And so the way I look at it is when you're honest about your human self. Before I was talking about being honest about your divine self and seeing divinity in others, but now I'm talking about being honest about your human self. The more you see your human self fully and completely, you will be able to find every experience of pain, heartache, despair, jealousy, rage, envy, lust, desire, greed, whatever, in your own self, in your own consciousness. And so the more you sit with yourself in meditation, and when you're digging deep, or things are just naturally coming to the surface, you'll see all of life is within you. And so one of the qualities of Buddha nature is not only seeing your divine Buddha nature, but you see your human nature. You see the difficulty in it, all the confusion, the chaos, the divisiveness. Like there's nothing in this world that I can't find within my own self. Like all hell, violence, greed, whatever. When you find it in yourself and you're able to sit with it with love first, then it becomes easy to do it with others because you're not afraid of it. Whereas, a lot of times people are, say, terrified of mental illness. Like, oh my God, like that guy's mentally ill. I don't know what the hell he's going to do next. But when you can find mental illness within your own self, like schizophrenic thoughts, violent thoughts, divisive thoughts, vengeful thoughts, and you're able to sit with them fully and deeply, then if you're sitting with someone who's mentally ill, just to use this as an example, they don't frighten you. Like you're not afraid of them because you've already faced it within yourself. When you can find the loose cannons within your own self, then when you're in the world and you're sitting with a loose cannon, you're not fearful. Now, it may be wise not to do much business with them, but you get a sense of what I mean? Yeah. And so, a big part of this is as you discover more light in your own self, you see more light in others. As you discover more darkness and difficulty and pain and confusion within your own self, it becomes easier to sit with that in others. And this is a skill, that's necessary to develop if you're going to be in any kind of counseling role or teaching role or, holding space or group, doing groups and this type of thing. You need to know how to sit with pain. Teachers who don't know how to sit with pain, oftentimes they have a big shadow and they tend to shame their students and blame them and do that thing that I was speaking about in the beginning where they say, oh, the reason your life is messed up is because, you are messed up. And so, they say things that are hurtful and shaming and blaming the student because the teacher's afraid to be with something that's difficult. But the more willing you are to be with darkness, the more of a bodhisattva you can be here on planet Earth. And it's the only way truly to be free, is to get comfortable, with pain. With pain. I'm going to just say one more thing. Yesterday, today I was hiking in the snow, but yesterday I was hiking out in the desert. And kind of hiked up on this bluff and was just having, this incredibly expansive consciousness. And I noticed a bias in me, my whole life, to really identify, say, I just kept getting this image, say, of Gandhi, just like Gandhi, like love and truth and peace. But out there in the desert, I also kept getting this image, of a wolf. I think because the other day I was hanging out with my friend who's a fighter, but I kept getting this image of a wolf, and I realized, oh, that's an aspect of me too. And I'm both the healer and the killer. I'm both the lover and the hater. I'm both the darkness and the light. And when you're really honest about this experience of what you are in the depth of your being, you see that it's all within you. And when you're not afraid of it, there's great freedom there. Now, of course, whenever there's a choice, we always choose the higher. But we really want to take ownership of these aspects of ourself. Like even if we'll have a little fun here, even if you're a vegan here on planet Earth, your life is still as a carnivore. You drive a car, the clothes you wear, you're still destroying and eating the planet. It's just like, it's all within us. And not to judge it and attack oneself, but to see it's all a part of the experience. In a vastly non-dual way. It's quite paradoxical, but not to have an intense bias of one versus the other. The more honest you are, the more open you are. And most spiritual people, they just want to be one. And they just want to be the energy of Gandhi. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's a beautiful energy. But when we dismiss, say, the energy of power, or of rage, or of difficulty, or sadness, we divorce ourselves from reality. We divorce ourselves from reality. We kind of isolate ourselves in a divisive bubble. So anyways, I hope that last part wasn't confusing, but I was really struck again and again as I felt this energy arise within me yesterday. Basically the energy of the carnivore, that which takes life. The energy of Kali, of the destroyer. That's here too. That's here too. It's all of it. And none of it. So anyways, good to see you, Kyle.
Yeah, thanks, Craig.
Yeah, of course. Okay. Hey, Richard, do you have a question? Let's see if I can find Richard here.
Hey, Craig.
Hey, Richard. Is the raise hand function gone?
Hey, everyone. It is for me. I know that it isn't for everyone. But for whatever reason, I don't see an option to raise my hand in participants.
Okay.
I know that Danny can raise his hand, and I know that David raised his hand earlier. So I have no idea what's going
Okay, yeah,
on.
maybe it's a glitch in the matrix or something with Zoom. I'll have to
Yeah.
sort it out. So, anyways, well, Richard, what's on your mind?
Yeah, I am. Um, let's see here. What question am I ask? Yeah, I gotta have a big question, so you can kind of answer it
Yeah.
in whatever way wants to come to you. But I'm curious about the fundamental transmissions, head, heart, gut, and you talk about a transmission of being evolution itself, or kind of awakenings. Um, I'm also curious about where no self fits into that, like what Adyashanti talks about, the disappearance of the inner world, no self. So not the awakening of the mind, no self. Um, these are two distinct things as I understand them, at least
Yeah.
listening to him. I also love to hear what teachers you felt brought these fundamental awakenings or embodied them most fully. But I get that a good teacher is going to bring all of them. But for instance, you talk about David. You said David had it all, but I had to go to Adya to blast open the mind. That was a transmission that he brought, and that I needed him to. It was in David's teaching, and so I'm curious as to what teachers have brought forward these particular transmissions in the most kind of embodied way in your life. So cool.
Yeah, Richard, boy, there was, it seemed like there might have been 8 different questions there. Um, so let me feel into this a little bit here. So, different teachers teach what I call on different rays. You know, like there's these different rays that we can teach on. And so, say for example, you know, I once heard that like there were 7 rays, and I could be wrong, but that's just the number I'm coming up with in my head. But like the ray of love is a huge ray. The ray of truth feels radically different. The ray of beauty is quite different from those two as well. There's the ray of peace, you know, and so, you know, we could go on here, the ray of strength. And, you know, different teachers have different jobs. They've come to planet Earth to offer different things. You know, like Christ, for example, uh, brought the awakening and the recognition of Christ consciousness. And so all these are different realms, you know, which a teacher can teach from. And me, as a naturally curious individual, I'm not satisfied with just peace. Like when I go to my local Dharma center, it's in the lineage of Spirit Rock. You know, they like to teach, you know, basically it's peace / clarity of mind. Like that's what's there. There's not much juice there. You know, there's not much love there. And this isn't a criticism of it. It's just they're really good at teaching mindfulness and connection with peace. And so being human is a complex experience. Like we all know, it's complex. And so if you just study, say, the realm of peace and clarity of mind, you'll have one experience which will feel peaceful and clear, but you might feel a little bit dry and dead and disconnected from the heart. So Aj's teaching, he does a really good head, heart, gut. You know, it's like he's kind of like, I want to cover the 3 major bases here. And it's really simple, it's really direct. When I first was seeing him, he was, you know, he kind of had, I'm going to use this word, a gimmick, where he could just kind of 1, 2, 3, wake someone up to vast spacious awareness. And I've spoken to him about this, and he even said, he's like, I stopped doing it because I realized that it was, he didn't say doing more harm than good, but he said no one could embody it. Like, people needed to come back to the basics. And people would have big experience, but then they'd go outside in the parking lot, would be fighting with their wife like 10 minutes later or whatever, because they didn't have the foundation to embody it. And so with me at that moment in history, I did have the foundation, because at that time I'd spent 10 years with my teacher. My teacher was really good at giving me the foundation of what I needed. And so different teachers offer different things. And a lot of teachers get very popular because they can, do the 1, 2, 3, boom, we're awake. But because that's exciting, right? And teachers who teach more of a progressive path, they tend to be less popular, because they're basically saying, hey, we got to do some hard work. we're gonna dig a foundation, and then we're gonna lay the foundation. And not many people want to do that. They just want the 1, 2, 3, boom, I'm awake. So the reason I'm feeling a little bit confused here is because you threw in, this question about, a no self and the different ways that shows up. The transcendent awakening, I normally don't call that no self, because I think that's a really misunderstanding. When one faces fear fully and completely, and is willing to let go of this bias that I've been speaking about tonight, that's oftentimes is the doorway to the true experience of no self. Because when there's a self, there's a judgment of what I like and what I don't like. And there's also this self-consciousness, where there's someone in the head that's commenting, again, on what I like, what I don't like. But through facing fear, which is what nobody wants to do, when you truly face fear, when you truly face hell, when you walk in the direction of hell, the ego really begins to dissolve. Because this is the basic program of the ego, is run from hell. It's like, run away from hell. And, it's kind of like in that movie, The Matrix, where whatever the guy's name is, Keanu Reeves, when he's walking toward the fight, he's just walking into it and realizing the fight can't hurt me. It can't hurt me. And you have to walk into the fight, go through the fight, outlive the fight, for that self-consciousness to fall away. And when it falls away, it goes back to what I was saying before about, then there's only one voice in your head. And normally it's no voice. So there's no longer head, heart, gut. There's just like one thing. One thing. And not that many people can relate to it, because, again, human beings are complex, and people tend to relate to their complexity and have all these different identities happening all at once. And so when it falls away, It's just a different kind of way of being. And I'll say this. So yes, it's true what Adya says, that the inner world and the outer world fall away, like the distinction, the difference. You know, that's kind of what I was talking about with Kyle a moment ago, with where I realized that the consciousness that I am is not just Gandhi. It's also the predator. It's also the predator. Because what I am is life itself. Life itself. Not just the good, but life itself. Life eating life, life giving birth to life, life destroying life, life creating life. When you realize yourself to be this, I mean, it could almost be interpreted as being an egomaniac or supreme narcissist or something, because it sounds so crazy when I just say it out loud and talk about it. That I am life. That this is life. And it feels as if there's no division between you and anything. In egoic terms, there's no judgment between you and anything. I think I was speaking about this, a couple of weeks ago, about it's like giving the character full permission to play itself out in any way it needed to, but with supreme love. And so the problem with being human is I'd love just to agree with Adya and say, this is it. This is the final end all be all. There's no inner or no outer experience. It all implodes into one thing. But even as I say that, I know that's not the truth either. The truth is more like both and neither. Both and neither. So is Christ consciousness the absolute? Yes. Is no self the absolute? Yes. Here's a fun one. Is egoic consciousness the absolute? Yes. Like, how's that for one? People don't like that one. Is nirvana the end all be all? Yes. Yes. Almost every spiritual tradition has this bias that this is the absolute, this way. Christ is the way. No, Buddha is the way. Theravada Buddhism, no Tibetan Buddhism, no Dzogchen, no. And again, it's just different flavors, the way the absolute presents itself. The beautiful thing about this is the path never becomes boring. And once you've fallen into no self, the seeking, like the grasping at, like I need this to complete me, that falls away. And there's more just a sense of, like today, when I was just looking at this giant boulder, it's like 20 or 25 feet high, and I just looked at it, and there was just something in me that wanted to climb it. It was dangerous as hell, and it had snow all over it, and this and that, but there's just something in me that in a childlike way just wanted to get to the top, even if it meant risking my life and breaking my back. It's like there's just something in me that just said, I'm going to stand on top of that. I'm going to get up that. And see, this is kind of that flow of what you mentioned of surrendering to the force of evolution. There's something within us that just wants to grow, that just wants to explore, and there's a freedom in it. There's not a need in it. Like, I don't need to be on top of the mountain, but there's a love in the exploration of the path. And simultaneously, there is a humility that knows that God's intelligence is greater than this consciousness. And so we were speaking about realms. You know, I think you asked me about realms during the retreat or last week. I can't remember. But that humility that says, I'm going to be open. I'm going to see, what does life show me? What does life bring to this one? What's life bringing forward? You know, do I know the individual who's awakening, or does the Creator know what is best, or what my next step is, what the next step is, what wants to happen? Do I know, or does the Creator know? Do I know that nirvana is the ultimate end-all, be-all? I know nirvana is incredible and it's absolute. But if I step into nirvana, and then an hour later God is bringing me something different, I'm going to pay attention to what that is. Say, oh, what's this about? What's this about? And let the Creator teach me, instead of me having a bias thinking that I'm a Buddhist. The Buddha knew the one and only way, and so I'm only going to focus on this one thing. If that's what my heart says, I dive fully into it. But if I dive fully into it and realize that truth, and then God wants to drop another truth into me, I'm going to listen. Because I'm humble, and I don't think I know better. I think that I don't know. I don't know. And the beauty in this is then it becomes just this ongoing exploration. Like Denny sent me this wonderful picture of him rock climbing out in the California desert. And I want to say, well, where's that? Like, where's that? Because I see beauty there. I see spaciousness there. I see a power there. And there's just an innate sense of wanting to know what that is. To explore that. To explore it. This is one of the shadows of, you know, many lineages and traditions, is that, oh, this is the way. This is the ultimate absolute. I was like, oh, really? And then people get guarded in it. They guard their realization. And when you guard and when you defend, you build a castle around something, and it starts to stink in there. You're like, this is the way. It's like, just look up at the night sky. It's like, what's the way? Oh, it's like this universe is infinite. It's infinite. It's like, what is God? Who made God? What made God? It's like, what? You know what I mean? It's we get so arrogant on our path as spiritual people. And we're not much different than political people, you know, thinking this is how it is. And I have a hard time having any walls. Because walls to me feel like hell. It feels like hell. And so the bottom line here that maybe I want to convey is, when you sit and you're open and you trust, then God can show you many things. And you let God lead you instead of being just led by, one spiritual teacher or one spiritual book or something you think is the right way. You let the intelligence of the universe lead you. You let it lead you. And more as you step into the experience of no self, there's just no walls then. And with no walls, you can experience things very easily in an absolute way, like Christ consciousness. Oh, nirvana. Oh. But then if there's something new that wants to come as well, it's like, oh, there's more and more and more. And there's freedom in that, especially when there's not grasping at it or what's that word that people say? Or spiritual materialism, where people want to show off or whatever, claim something. The more you open to it, it becomes you, you become it. And there's just an innocence in it. Just a radical innocence of being. And a continual childlike humility of, oh, like, wow. You become awestruck again and again and again. And simultaneously know that you are it, creating it, giving birth to it in your own self. So anyways, thanks, Richard. I hope there was something valuable there. Yeah, good to see you. Digging those glasses. All right, let's see. I think I did my part. Let me see if anyone over here in Facebook land has something for me. Hey, Craig, I'm wondering about emptying oneself of self-interest. Hi, Craig. I'm wondering about emptying oneself of self-interest. Being really honest with myself, I see how much my actions ultimately arise from self-interest and getting what I want. It's powerful to be able to see this without self-judgment. Could you please speak about the emptying out of self-interest along the path? Yeah, Nanette, if we're doing this, the caution here is just not to do it in a violent way. So for me, when I stepped onto this path in this lifetime, I had so much baggage from a previous incarnations as a monk that I saw that any self-interest was bad or wrong and this and that. And I was going to war trying to get rid of myself. The great question with self-interest is it just like a silly desire that's inconsequential? Is it something, self-interest, to puff up the ego? Or is self-interest in alignment with your heart? Because when it's in alignment with your heart, we want to walk in that direction. Then it becomes a movement of love, a movement of empowerment, a movement of compassion and healing. If the self-interest is, I can say with a little bit of like almost blushing or embarrassment, once upon a time, I bought it's like a $36 cake for my daughter, my oldest daughter. We had a cake maker in town for a minute here in Durango, and it was the most delicious cake I have ever eaten in my life. And I gave a slice of that cake to my daughter, one to my wife, one to me. And then next thing you know, I was hiding the cake, like from my wife. She was hiding it from me. We were all fighting over the cake because it was so good. And so this kind of self-interest where it's just yummy cake, do we want to get rid of that and empty that out? Yeah, please, please. But if there's self-interest that, I'll say it differently. If it's self-love, we want more of that. If it's self-interest to puff up the ego, yeah, let's soften around that. I don't know if you have a question there. You said it directly. You said we want to do this without self-judgment. So it doesn't want to be harsh. We don't want to be judgmental. We don't want to make ourselves bad or wrong for being human. It's a natural thing to put yourself first. I actually was born with the opposite quality of a survival technique was I'm going to put myself last. And so I just had the opposite side of this is, you put yourself, some people put themselves first, some people put themselves last. And they're both survival techniques, survival tendencies. And both of them are foolish. So you look at that place within you that is, wanting to puff itself up. And the more you love yourself, the more you love the part of you that feels insecure, then self-interest just falls away. So the more you love yourself, so it sounds paradoxical, the more you love yourself and love the insecurity, the part of you that's needy or grasping or wanting to be seen or heard, the more you love that aspect of self, the more quickly self-interest falls away. The more you make it a problem that you're human and you have human needs, the more you'll develop a shadow and fight with yourself. All right, so great question. Let's see. A bunch of people tell me Happy New Year. Happy New Year to all of you. Let's see here. Such great wisdom about finding it all within, the pain, the fear, the joy, the bliss. Thank you. Okay, here's a fun question to close out the evening. Hi, Craig. Did you do psychedelics? And if so, do you feel they expanded your awakening / consciousness? Yeah, so I've done psychedelics. I did psychedelics when I was really young. I'm going to say something fun here. I first was doing psychedelics when I was a 14-year-old boy. And it expanded my consciousness. Did it stick? No. No. I'm yet to meet anyone who's done psychedelics and is now an awake, enlightened master who I actually respect. Can it be a part of the path of healing? Sure. Are they absolutely dangerous? Yes. Just in my line of work, I end up becoming a dumping ground for a lot of the people who've done psychedelics and who've experienced what I call train wrecks. So they've done ayahuasca and then all of a sudden they become mentally ill or bipolar or brought on major depressive disorder, intense anxiety and panic disorders. So the thing with psychedelics is basically it lifts the superego out of the equation. And it really opens the heart. And so that can be really liberating if you have no psychological wounding, but it's liberating temporarily. And I've experimented around with all kinds of psychedelics and had all sorts of great visions and this and that and things from big doses to micro doses. And ultimately, if I was going to recommend something, I recommend yoga and meditation and just a long, slow journey on the path. Just slow and steady wins the race. Can ayahuasca be healing and bring forth great insight? Sure. Can LSD and psilocybin be healing and bring forth insight? Sure. But what I found more often than not is psychedelics tend to give more insight and less healing. More insight and less healing. Healing, God makes you work for. God makes you own it. To truly heal means that we are now empowered. With psychedelics, they tend not to empower us. They tend to give us insight, like, wow, this is the nature of the universe. But then you have to lay the foundation to actually embody it. Because I've worked with so many individuals who've become train wrecks after experiencing psychedelic experiences, because I've worked with so many people who've had their lives so messed up through these things, I don't recommend them. Now, 8 or 9 times out of 10, people have positive experiences with it. And I'll say, maybe I'll make the statistics like this. Let's say 4 out of 10, it's really like will change your life. 8 out of 10, it's, like, okay, it was pretty positive. 1 or 2 out of 10 is like, oh my God, it just spun me out into fear and despair for a day, a month, a year, 2 years. And again, I'm just not on this bandwagon where, people are saying you do psilocybin once and you quit smoking and all your trauma's healed and all your PTSD is gone. It's just not true, what these studies are saying. If someone's in major depressive disorder and you do psychedelics, can it be really healing temporarily? Sure. Can it kind of blast you out of that state and, help you get on with your life? Sure. Does it actually heal? Absolutely and 100%? No. There's no magic pill here on planet Earth. This is an evolutionary world. I wish there was a magic pill, but there's not. There's not. But can they be helpful for some people? Absolutely. The only time I recommend them is, individuals who, where it's a last resort, where they've tried Prozac, they've tried, this psychiatric med, this thing, that thing. They've gone to years of therapy. They've done this, they've done that. They've got themselves in a pretty good place and they're still dealing with, say, something, really difficult. And, they've done somatic breath work and somatic experiencing and massage and body work and this and that and been on retreats. And sometimes it can just give them a little bump and they're like, oh, but then they want to ride that wave. The same way I would recommend, like, hey, why don't you try going on a 10-day meditation retreat? Why don't you do 90 minutes of yoga every day for a month and see what happens to your consciousness? See what happens. Because psychedelics are a wild card, again, I have a hard time getting behind them. But have I done them? Certainly. Do I recommend them? Not so much. I'd rather put that up to you to decide, because I would never want to be responsible saying, you should do this. Everyone should try ayahuasca. It's so healing. I'm not going to say that. Could it be healing for a lot of people? Absolutely. Is it destructive for a few? Sure. Ultimately, like the first time I did psychedelics, again, I was 14. Basically it just showed me, oh yeah, there's more to life than you see with your eyes. But I already knew that. I already knew that coming into this lifetime. So it's kind of just like, oh, this is fun and this is exciting and it's wild. And, there's can be tremendous insight here. If you're a real square, sometimes it can kind of open you up. But for those of us who are already really open, sometimes it can be a little bit gambling. One last thing I'll say about this before I'm done this evening. A lot of people have come to me. They've done psychedelics and their kundalini woke up, I'm going to say prematurely. And by that, I mean it woke up in a way that it was unmanageable. They couldn't control it. They couldn't function. Their lives became real messy because, a very powerful divine force woke up in them. And then they had a difficult road ahead of them. I'm not saying that that's bad. I'm not saying that's wrong. It was just difficult. And so that's another caution. There's a real correlation between, blasting your consciousness open and kundalini just raging through your body. If you don't have any good meditation and yoga training and something like that happens, it can be very disorienting and confusing. So anyways, hope that was helpful, Colleen. How are you, Kristen?
I'm fine. My question was a little bit longer, so I'm going to try to shorten it since
Okay.
we have limited time. It's about the three levels: the head, the heart, and the gut.
Yeah.
And I feel that at the heart level, I have done a lot of work, and I'm also inclined towards it. And I can easily tune into and am comfortable with shadow material, and I also can access that deeper heart, which in me manifests as beauty and sacredness in everything I see. There's just, it comes to me as beauty and sacredness. Sacred mundane is something that comes up for me.
Yeah.
So the place where, like I said previously, the kundalini has definitely risen to my head, and I don't know if that's why I have such unrelenting thoughts. I do have a very strong superego, so a lot of guilt thoughts constantly. And I observe the thoughts, I sometimes question the thoughts, but it's just such a constant barrage. And obviously there's secondary emotions then resulting, and I am aware of present to them. But so one of the things that I've begun to do a bit is just sit with the hara, kind of, rather than trying to see through my thoughts and unravel that. I kind of went to the hara, but I'm still not sure which way to go, whether it is to just to try to continue looking through these thoughts or unraveling them, understanding the story more in depth. I've done a lot of therapy. I'm a clinical psychologist. I have a lot of insight, but this is still unrelenting.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'll say this. So the kundalini, one of its jobs is to bring up the darkness within, say, human consciousness. And by the darkness, I don't mean things that are bad. I'm just going to say by darkness, I mean the collective consciousness. So it basically, kundalini can be like a light that's shining in the basement. And so in the basement, it can be dusty, it can be dirty, there can be just coarse things in the air. So when the kundalini lights up, sometimes it just lights up in an impersonal way. And so when you rest in the hara has an energy of impersonalness to it. And so as soon as you just sit, and there's all kinds of just like stuff just running in the mind, all kinds of, psychic, mental, emotional material. And if you just sit and sit and sit and sit and sit, eventually it burns itself out. So if there's a shadow there that we're avoiding, it won't burn itself out. But you told me you've been to therapy, you're a clinical psychologist.
I'm very comfortable with.
Yeah, if you're comfortable with doing that work, then great, you do the work. But at some point, you can look, and you have to be real honest. Like, do these thoughts have a theme? And if they do have a theme,
I
where,
found,
go ahead.
yeah. A lot of them are around incompetence. Incompetence as a mother, incompetence professionally, incompetence.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
So when you say that word incompetence, like let's just say incompetence as a mother,
Mhm.
where do you feel that in your body?
Solar plexus,
Yeah.
close to the heart.
Yeah. Yeah. And so we want to feel into the solar plexus and meet that with love. Meet that with love. And to feel into the insecurity there. You know, to see that, you know, in a sense, that young girl there and say, you know, I see you, I hear you, and I love you. I love you. I love you so much. I love you so much. If you try to see through her, in a sense, that could be a very violent thing to see through her. But if you see that there is an aspect of our human self that's suffering and in need of love, well, that's much different. And so we meet it with love again and again and again. So I want you to forget about seeing through. And I want you just to imagine just I'm going to love and love and love and sit and hold and love, sit and hold and love.
So more heart and hara.
Yeah, yeah. And so, you know, if I ask you, do you know that that aspect of you is worthy of love?
Very recently, I have finally got to that place.
Yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
so okay, I'm worthy of love. And now I want you to love bomb that part of you. So you just like love it, love it, and love it, and love it. And say, oh my God, you know, I'm so worthy of love. You're so worthy of love. And just shower love into these parts of yourself that feel incompetent. And so see, this is the opposite energy of the judge. The judge loves to see through things, but then we're just reinforcing the judge. But when
The
you
judge
love,
is seeking safety. The judge is seeking safety through catching mistakes. So
exactly. So the one who feels unsafe, the one who feels insecure, she needs to be loved to death. So we love her again and again and again. And one of the things that happens, which is confusing, is sometimes the pain is in our solar plexus, but then the thoughts manifest in the mind. And
yes.
so I always like to think, if the mind is busy, can you find the root of that busyness in the body? So you chase it down into the body. And oftentimes we will find an aspect of self that doesn't feel loved, that doesn't feel safe, that doesn't feel supported. And because we're working on Buddhas, we're working on being Christ, we say, oh, there's someone here who's suffering. I'm going to walk in that direction. I'm going to love her. I'm going to love them to death. Because I care, because that's my nature. Because that's the right thing to do, is to love. Not to judge, not to get out the non-dual sword and try to cut it out of my consciousness. But I'm going to love and love and love and love. Was that helpful?
Very much.
Yeah. Krista, I'm so glad that I got your question in here. That was beautiful. Thank you everyone for showing up. Thanks for sharing your hearts with me. Happy New Year to each and every one of you. And we'll see you next time. Good night, everyone. Bye for now.